My dad called me a failure at Thanksgiving. I proved him wrong in 20 minutes. My name is Riley Thompson, and I'm 29 years old. Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house always has a soundtrack. You hear the clinking of silverware, the fake laughter that covers up years of judgment, and my mom's quiet, nervous sighs trying to hold everything together. But this year, one sentence cut through all that noise. You're a failure. Riley, at 29, you've got nothing to show. My father said it. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. His voice has a special kind of weight. It's the kind of weight that silences a room. My cousins froze. My Aunt Karen's hand stopped halfway to her mouth, her wine glass just hanging in the air. And me? I smiled. I just smiled. Because I had been waiting for this moment. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, and drop a comment to let me know where you are watching from. The good china was out. That's how I knew the performance had to be perfect. My mother, Mary, only used the gold-rimmed plates when she was trying to prove something. Usually, it was to my Aunt Karen, my dad's sister, who measured success in carats and square footage. The smell of dry turkey and simmering resentment filled the dining room. It was the same smell every year. My father, Jim, sat at the head of the table. He carved the bird with a kind of aggressive precision, like he was disciplining it. "Look at that," he'd boom, holding up a perfect slice. That's how it's done. Everything was a lesson. Everything was a test. My older brother Ethan sat at our dad's right hand. He was the golden boy, the crown prince. He wore a crisp button-down shirt even at Thanksgiving. He was 32, had a mortgage, a wife, and a real job in finance. He was everything I wasn't. I was at the other end of the table, near the wobbly leg, crammed next to my teenage cousins who were more interested in their phones. I was the family project, the one they spoke about in whispers. So much potential, they'd say, which was code for wasting her life. The conversation was a predictable game of status. Aunt Karen talked about her son's new SUV. Ethan talked about his fourth quarter bonus. My dad nodded, beaming, soaking in the success of his son. I just stayed quiet. I learned years ago that my life was not a valid topic of conversation. My wins were not wins. They were hobbies. My struggles were not challenges. They were failures. I was here because it was Thanksgiving, and if I didn't show up, it would be a different kind of drama. The drama of "Where's Riley? Is she okay?" She's so sensitive, so I showed up. I put on my nicest sweater, the one without any holes, and I prepared to be invisible. But they never let me stay invisible for long. Aunt Karen was the one who lit the fuse. She always was. She smiled at me, her red lipstick too bright. "And Riley, what is it you do again, dear?" "That little computer thing." The table went quiet. All eyes turned to me. The computer thing. I'd been working on it for 3 years. It was my entire life. I felt the heat rise in my chest. I forced a small, tight smile. "It's going well, Aunt Karen. It's a software company." "Oh, a company," she said, drawing the word out. "That's lovely. Does it pay well?" "You look a little thin." "It's pre-launch," I said, my voice sounding small. "We're launching soon. That's what you said last Christmas, wasn't it?" Ethan chimed in, not even looking up from his plate. "Still pre-launch?" "This is it, actually," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The launch it's tonight." My dad stopped carving. He put the knife down with a loud clack on the china plate. The room went dead silent. "Tonight?" he asked. "Yes, later tonight." He stared at me. His face was a mask of pure, unfiltered disappointment. He wasn't angry. He was exasperated. It was the look you give a dog that has, once again, tracked mud onto the clean floor. "Thanksgiving," he said, his voice low. "You're launching a fantasy project on Thanksgiving." "Jim," my mother whispered, her eyes wide. "Please." "No, Mary," he said, holding up a hand. He looked back at me. "I'm tired of this. I'm tired of pretending this is a real thing. Your brother, he builds a family. He builds a 401k. He builds a future. You build excuses on a laptop." I gripped my fork, my knuckles white. "Dad, please, not now. Not here. When, Riley? When are we supposed to talk about it?" He pointed the carving knife at me just for a second. "You're 29 years old. You live in a tiny apartment that smells like old coffee. You have no savings. Your brother is managing a portfolio of over $10 million. You are playing make-believe in your bedroom. I could feel the tears. They were hot and sharp, burning the back of my throat. I refused to let them fall. I had cried at this table before. It only ever made him angrier. I have a company, I whispered. It was all I had. A company? He laughed. It was a short barking sound that had no humor in it. You have a hobby. A very expensive, very childish hobby that has paid you exactly $0. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to that cold, clear tone that always shattered me. The whole table was frozen watching this execution. You're a failure, Riley. At 29, you've got nothing to show. There it was. The words I had felt in his silences for my entire life. The words I saw in his eyes every time he looked at Ethan and then at me. He had finally said them out loud. Aunt Karen looked down at her plate, suddenly fascinated by her mashed potatoes. Ethan had the good sense to look slightly uncomfortable. My mom closed her eyes, a single tear rolling down her cheek. She was crying for me, or maybe for herself. It didn't matter. She didn't say anything. She never said anything. I felt the humiliation like a physical weight. It was heavy and it was crushing me. I felt small. I felt worthless. I felt exactly like he wanted me to feel. I should have run from the table. I should have locked myself in the bathroom. I should have screamed at him, but I didn't. Something inside me, something that had been worn down to a sharp, hard point, finally took over. I looked up from my plate. I met his cold, disappointed eyes, and I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It wasn't a forgiving smile. It was the smallest, coldest smile I owned. My dad's brow furrowed. He was expecting tears. He was expecting a tantrum. He was not expecting this. What's so funny? He demanded, his voice rising. Nothing, Dad, I said. My own voice was perfectly calm. It was a terrible, beautiful new sound. You're right, he blinked. He was completely thrown. I am? You're absolutely right, I said, picking up my fork. I have nothing to show. I paused and I held his gaze. Yet? I took a bite of turkey. It tasted like cardboard and ash. But the smile stayed on my face, because I had been waiting for this. Not for the insult. Not for the humiliation. I had been waiting for the moment when I would finally be ready. And my father, in his infinite, cruel wisdom, had just given me the perfect cue. My dad's worship of Ethan is the oldest story in our family. It's the foundation our house was built on. Ethan was the firstborn, the son, the one who was built in my father's image. I was the secondborn, the daughter, the creative one. In my family, creative was a polite word for unreliable. Ethan did everything right. He played football. I was in the computer lab. His trophies for most valuable player lined the mantelpiece. My certificates from statewide coding competitions were clutter for my mom to file away. When Ethan was 16, he wanted a car. My dad co-signed a loan for a brand new truck. A man needs to understand credit, he'd said proudly. When I was 16, I wanted a better computer. I had saved up $400 from babysitting. I needed $300 more to get the processor I needed to run my coding programs. A computer? My dad had said, not looking up from his newspaper. What's wrong with the family one in the living room? You don't need to be locked in your room all day, Riley. It's not healthy. I babysat for 2 more months and bought the parts myself. I built it in my bedroom while he and Ethan were at a football game. The real split happened in college. Ethan went to Michigan State and majored in business administration. A practical degree, my dad announced at a family barbecue, clapping Ethan on the back. He's going to make something of himself. He's learning how to manage people. That's a real skill. I got a scholarship to Carnegie Mellon for computer science. My dad was confused. So, you're going to fix computers? Like the support line people? No, Dad, I tried to explain, my voice bright with an excitement he refused to share. I want to build things, software, applications, things that change how people connect. He just shook his head. Sounds like a lot of screen time. Be careful your eyes don't go bad. Everything was a comparison, and I was always the lesser number. When Ethan got his first internship at a bank, my dad took the whole family out to a steak dinner. He raised a glass. To Ethan, the first step on the ladder. I built my first functional app in my sophomore year, a stupid little program that organized study groups. My dad asked if it could at least order a pizza. Ethan failed 2 classes in his junior year. My dad paid for the tutors and the summer courses. Everyone stumbles, he said. It's about how you get up. I got a 4.0 my junior year. My dad nodded. Good. Make sure you keep that scholarship. We're paying for your brother's summer. After graduation, the gap became a canyon. Ethan got a job at a mid-level marketing firm. My dad was ecstatic. He co-signed the lease on Ethan's expensive apartment in downtown Ann Arbor. You need to look the part, he said. Dress for the job you want. I started working 2 jobs. I was a barista at 5 a.m. and I was a freelance coder from 6 p.m. until 2 a.m. Every single cent I saved went into my idea. My project. I called it EchoLink. The idea came to me when I was studying abroad for a semester in Japan. I was so lonely. I saw people all around me talking, laughing, connecting, but I was trapped behind a wall of language. I could use text translators, but they were slow. They were awkward. They didn't capture tone. What if you could just talk? What if you could speak into your phone in English, and the person next to you heard it instantly in Japanese? What if their phone could listen to their reply and play it back to me in perfect conversational English? Not text, not robotic voices. Real-time, seamless, voice-to-voice translation. I became obsessed. I built the first clunky prototype in my dorm room. It was slow. It was full of bugs. But it worked. I told my family about it one night over a Sunday dinner. I was buzzing with excitement. I pulled out my laptop to show them. That's nice, dear, my mom said. But are you sure you're eating enough? You look tired. Ethan, of course, scoffed. So, it's like Google Translate? I hate to break it to you, Riley, but that's already been done. It's different, I insisted, my face feeling hot. It's not for text. It's for voice. It's live. It's for 2 people standing in front of each other. It could change travel. It could change business. It could change everything. My dad had been silent, just staring at me. He waited for me to finish. Then he sighed, that long, heavy sigh of his. Riley, he said, I'm going to give you some advice. Your brother is building a 401k. You are building a fantasy. It is time to grow up. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of my life, poured into lines of code. 3 years of living on instant noodles and gas station coffee. 3 years of hearing about Ethan's promotion, Ethan's new car, Ethan's engagement to his perfect blonde girlfriend, Sarah. Last year, my dad gave Ethan $50,000. It was a gift for their wedding and a down payment on their new house. An investment in his future, my dad called it. 6 months ago, I hit a wall. A real one. My servers were overloaded. My small closed beta test was too successful. The program worked, but it was slow. I needed to scale. I needed new servers. I needed capital. I swallowed every ounce of my pride. I cried in my car for 10 minutes. Then I wiped my face and I went to my dad. I didn't ask for a handout. I came prepared. I had a 50-page business plan. I had a pitch deck. I had user analytics and retention rates. I had 5-year revenue projections. I asked for a $5,000 loan. I offered him a 10% stake in the company. He didn't even open the folder. He sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table we were at tonight. Riley, he said, and his voice was almost gentle, which was worse. It was the voice you use for someone who is very, very sick. I love you. You're my daughter. But I am not going to throw good money after bad. Your brother. His job is a sure thing. His house is a sure thing. This app? He gestured at my laptop. It's a gamble. And frankly, it's not a very good one. He reached into his wallet. He pulled out a $50 bill and pushed it across the table. Here, he said. Go get yourself a real dinner. And please think about what I said. The bank your brother works for is hiring. You're smart. You could be a teller. I looked at the $50 bill. I looked at his face, so sure of himself, so sure he was doing the right thing. I stood up. I left the folder on the table. I left the $50. And I walked out. I didn't cry. I didn't get sad. I got angry. It was a clean, cold anger that burned away all the doubt. I went back to my tiny apartment. I took out a high-interest, high-risk business loan from an online lender. I sold my car, the one I'd bought myself. I moved into an apartment the size of a walk-in closet to save on rent, and I worked. I didn't sleep. I just coded. I found partners. I cold-emailed tech journalists. I built a marketing plan. I got beta testers in 3 different countries. I set a launch date. The launch date was tonight, November 23rd, 10:00 p.m., Eastern Standard Time. My plan was simple. I would suffer through Thanksgiving dinner. I would go back to my closet-sized apartment. I would open my laptop. I would hit the launch button. And I would watch what happened, alone, with a cheap bottle of champagne I'd bought at a gas station. I had planned to just let it go live, quietly. But my dad, he just had to push. At every family gathering, he reminded me what stability looked like. "Your brother's building a family," he'd say, loud enough for me to hear from the other room. "You're building excuses." And every time I swallowed my pride, I took the hit. I nodded, until tonight. Tonight, when he called me a failure to my face, in front of everyone. He didn't know he was doing me a favor. He didn't know he was writing the perfect opening chapter for my success story. He thought he was ending me. He was just setting the stage. The final failure comment wasn't the first shot fired. It was just the killing blow. The humiliation started, as it always did, with the prayer. We all bowed our heads. My dad cleared his throat. "Lord," he began, his voice deep and formal. "We are thankful for this food. We are thankful for this family. We are thankful for our many, many blessings." He paused. "We are especially thankful for Ethan's new promotion and the bonus he earned through good, old-fashioned hard work." "Amen. Amen," echoed around the table. I kept my head down for an extra second. Hard work, as if I'd been sleeping in a hammock for 3 years. The small talk started. It was a minefield. Every question was a hidden trap. "Riley, you're so thin," Aunt Karen said, passing me the green bean casserole I knew she'd bought from a store. "Are you eating? You look stressed. You should find a nice man. That would settle you." "I'm fine, Aunt Karen. Just busy." "Busy with that project, right?" she said, winking at my dad. "My son David, he's busy too. Busy closing on his second house." I just smiled and nodded. "Take a bite. Don't engage. Survive." Then came Ethan. Ethan's style was different. He didn't attack. He helped. "Hey, Riles," he said, leaning over. He had this fake, concerned older brother look on his face. "I was thinking about you the other day." "Oh?" "Yeah. Listen, I know a guy in the HR department at my firm. They're hiring receptionists." He said it quietly, like he was doing me a secret favor. "It's a foot in the door. Good benefits. A steady paycheck. You could finally clear your debts. Start a 401k. You could finally, join the real world. Join the real world." As if I'd been living on Mars. "Thank you, Ethan," I said, my teeth clenched. "But I'm good. I'm really committed to my launch." "Right, the launch." He sighed, this big, theatrical, patient sigh. "Look, I get it. You have to see your little passion project through. But when it doesn't work out, and let's be honest, these things don't, the offer stands. I'm just looking out for you." He patted my arm. The pity in his touch was worse than any insult. It made my skin crawl. My mom saw the look on my face. She tried to deflect. "Now, Ethan, be nice," she said, her voice high and tight. "Riley is—" "She's finding her way." "Finding her way?" My dad pounced on the phrase. "She's 29, Mary. At what point does finding her way become being lost?" "Jim," my mom warned. That's when Aunt Karen saw her opening. That's when she asked the question I'd been dreading. "So, how is your business going, Riley?" I had my answer practiced. It was simple. It was clean. It gave away nothing. "It's challenging," I started to say. "But we're on track for our Q4 launch." Before I could even finish the sentence, my dad let out that laugh. It was a short, sharp snort. A sound of pure contempt. "Business?" he said, and he looked around the table, inviting them all to join the joke. "You call that a business? I haven't seen a single customer. I haven't seen a single dollar. Have you, Mary?" "Jim, stop it. What?" "It's a fair question," he said, his voice rising. "She's been building that business for 3 years. In 3 years, your brother got 2 promotions and bought a house. Riley has more debt than when she started. She sold her car." "You sold your car?" Aunt Karen gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Oh, Riley, honey. Why didn't you say anything? I'm sure Ethan could have helped you with the payments." The humiliation was complete. I was now a charity case. A poor, pitiful girl who had to sell her car because her little project failed. "It's called bootstrapping, Aunt Karen," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I sold it to fund the server expansion." "Fund the what?" She's talking computer nonsense again, my dad said, waving his hand dismissively. Maybe next year you'll build an actual career, Riley, Ethan added, that same fake sympathetic smile on his face. You just have to, join the real world. Laughter rippled around the table. It wasn't mean laughter from my cousins. It was that polite, awkward social laughter. The kind that says, we all agree this is sad and uncomfortable, and we're just going to laugh to move on. I sat there, staring at the blob of cranberry sauce on my plate. It was bright red, a violent splash of color on the white china. It was the only red thing on the table not already burning through my veins. I just sat there. I took the hit. I took all the hits. I let them all have their fun. I let them all see me as the family charity case, the fool, the lost, pitiful girl playing make-believe. My phone in my lap vibrated silently. It was a 15-minute warning from my automated launch scheduler. I looked at the laughing, pitying faces around the table. My family. And that's when my dad leaned in for the kill. That's when he decided the humiliation wasn't quite complete. He looked at me, his face full of righteous disappointment, and delivered the final verdict. You're a failure, Riley. At 29, you've got nothing to show. And the room went silent. The silence that followed his words was thick. It was heavier than the food, heavier than the judgment. In that silence, I saw two paths. The first path was the one I always took. I could feel the tears hot and stinging. I could get up, knocking my chair over. I would run to the guest bathroom, lock the door, and cry until my face was puffy. My mom would knock, whispering my name. My dad would yell from the table, "Just let her go. She needs to grow up." I would be the emotional one again. I would be the child. The second path was new. I could scream. I could stand up and list my accomplishments. I could tell them about the 18-hour days. I could tell them about the code I wrote that was so complex it was beautiful. I could tell them that TechCrunch had already agreed to review my app, but they wouldn't hear it. It would be nonsense. I would be defensive. I would be delusional. I would still lose. I looked at my dad's face. He was waiting. He was expecting one of those two reactions. He was waiting for the tears or the anger. That's how this game worked. I broke down, and he was proven right. He was the strong, logical father, and I was the unstable, emotional daughter. I saw those two paths, and I hated them. So I made a new one. My bag was at my feet. My laptop was inside. My old sticker-covered laptop that had been my only partner for 3 years. My phone vibrated in my lap again. The automated launch was scheduled for 10:12 p.m. It was now. I glanced at the oven clock. 7:34 p.m., the launch was set. I didn't have to do anything. I could just sit here, take the abuse, and go home. In 3 hours, my life would change anyway. But why should I wait? Why should I let this be the last word? Why should I go cry in my car when I could win? Right here, right now, with the taste of my dad's disapproval still on my tongue. He called me a failure. He said I had nothing to show. I had a choice. I could tell them they were wrong. Or I could show them. It was not a hot, angry decision. It was cold. It was clear. It was the calmest I had felt in my entire life. They want a show? I thought. I'll give them one. Slowly, I reached down and put my bag on my lap. The sound of the bag zipper was the only sound in the room. Zip. Everyone stopped breathing. They were all watching me. My mom's eyes were wide with panic. Riley, no. Don't. I didn't listen. I pulled out my laptop. My dad saw it. And he smirked. The smirk was the worst part. It was the "I told you so" look, see? He said to the whole table, his voice dripping with pity. She can't even last one dinner. She's hiding in that thing. That's her addiction. He looked at me. You're addicted to dreams, Riley, and you know what? Dreams don't pay the bills. That was the line. That was the final, fatal mistake he made. I opened the laptop. The screen glowed, lighting my face. I looked up from the glow, right into his eyes, and I said the line from the outline. The line that had been sitting in my heart for months. Dreams pay better than you think, Dad. My hands did not shake. I was logged in. I opened my web browser. I went to my launch dashboard. My finger hovered over the button. It was a big, digital, red button on the screen. It said, "Launch now." I could wait. I could stick to the plan. A 10 p.m. launch was better for the European markets. It was the smart move. I looked at Ethan. He was shaking his head slowly, a little smile on his face. He thought I was pathetic. I looked at my mom. Her face was a silent, desperate plea. Please don't make this worse. I looked at my dad. His face was hard, satisfied. He thought he had won. He thought he had finally broken me. You want to see what I've been building? I thought. You want to see what I have to show? I had been waiting for 3 years to press this button. I always thought I would be alone when I did it. I thought I'd be in my tiny apartment, drinking cheap champagne from a coffee mug, probably crying with relief. But this was so much better. This was justice. I took a slow, deep breath, and with one click, I made sure he would never, ever call me a failure again. I pressed the button. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to launch Echolink globally? I clicked yes. For about 10 seconds, nothing happened. The world didn't stop. No trumpet sounded. My dad just scoffed. Well, what was that? Did you send an email? Are you networking? He laughed. What a joke. I didn't say anything. I just opened a new tab. My company's Twitter account. I had pre-written the tweet. My finger hovered over the tweet button. I clicked it. Echolink is live. Real-time voice translation for every language. Let's connect the world. Echolink Tracker Tech. I sent it. Then I opened one more tab. The one I had been dreaming of for 3 years. My real-time analytics dashboard. It was a blank map of the world. At the top, a big, simple number. 0. My heart hammered against my ribs. Did it fail? Did the server crash? Did I just do all that for nothing? My dad was starting to talk again. See? Nothing. It's a fantasy, Riley. I'm trying to help you. Then a 1 appeared on the screen. Then a 10. Then 150. A tiny blue dot appeared on the map in Tokyo. Then another in Berlin. Then a flood of them in Brazil. My pre-launch partners. The press releases had just dropped. The marketing emails had just gone out. My phone, which had been silent on the table, buzzed once. My dad glared at it. Are you going to get that? Put it on silent. We're at dinner. I ignored him. I was watching the screen. The numbers were spinning. 1,000.5,000. My phone didn't just buzz. It began to vibrate. It was a continuous angry hum against the polished wood of the table. Bzzz. Everyone was staring at it. Turn that thing off, Ethan said, clearly annoyed. I can't, I said. My voice was a whisper. I couldn't look away from my laptop. 10,000 downloads. In the first 3 minutes, I clicked back to the Twitter tab. The post, it already had 500 retweets. My phone buzzed. It was a Twitter notification. TechCrunch just followed you. Bzzz! A new notification. The Verge just mentioned you in a tweet. Bzzz. An email from my server host. Your server load is at 80%. My phone was now making a loud, rattling, vibrating noise as notifications stacked up, one on top of the other, faster than the screen could clear them. The sound was deafening in the quiet, tense room. What? What is that, Riley? My mom asked. Her voice was trembling. That, I said, finally looking up from my screen, is my failure. I looked back down. The dashboard showed 20,000 active users. My phone screen lit up with an incoming email. The subject line was unblinking. Urgent. Echolink Acquisition Inquiry. Major Tech Co. I didn't open it. I just let it sit there. My phone was buzzing so hard it was starting to slide across the table. Bzz, bzz, bzz. It hit a spoon with a clink. Aunt Karen looked completely lost. Ethan looked pale. His smugness was gone. He was just staring at my phone. My dad was silent. His mouth was slightly open. His face was a blank, stunned mask. The outline says, 20 minutes. I let it go for 20 minutes. Nobody ate. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the clinking of my silverware as I calmly ate my green beans, and the non-stop, violent buzzing of my phone. Bzzz, bzzz, bzzz. A text message lit up the screen. It was from a number I didn't know. A journalist. Riley, just saw the launch. This is incredible. Can we talk? Need a quote for a story now. Finally, I checked the clock. 7:54 p.m. 20 minutes. I picked up my phone. The screen was a solid white wall of notifications. I had to hit the power button just to make it stop. The silence that fell was heavy. 20 minutes, I said, placing my phone face down on the table. I've been live for 20 minutes. I turned my laptop screen around so they could all see it. The glowing map of the world, now covered in thousands of blue dots. And the number at the top. And I have, I checked the dashboard, 50. No, 53,420 active downloads. I looked right at my father. How much nothing is that, Dad? The silence was a new kind. It wasn't the tense, angry silence from before. It was a hollow, buzzing silence. The kind of silence that happens after a loud noise. The only sound for a full minute was the clink of my fork against the china plate. I took another bite of my green beans. They were cold. I didn't care. I didn't look at them. I just stared at my laptop screen. The number was now 58,000. Finally, someone moved. It was my cousin Sarah. She was 19. She lived on her phone. She was staring at it, her mouth open. Her own phone had been buzzing too, but no one had noticed under the noise of mine. She looked up at me, her eyes wider than I had ever seen them. "Riley?" she whispered. I looked at her. "Riley, are you trending?" The word hung in the air. It was a word this family did not understand. "What?" Aunt Karen said, her voice sharp. "What's trending?" "On Twitter," Sarah said. She was breathless. "Look." She held up her phone. She didn't show it to her mom. She showed it to Ethan. Ethan leaned over, annoyed. His golden boy patience was gone. He looked at her phone, and his face, which was already pale, went completely white. That's not possible," he stammered. "What is it?" My dad demanded. He was still standing, his hands on the table, leaning forward like he was about to fall. "It's Echolink," Ethan said. He pulled out his own phone. His fingers, which were usually so steady and sure on his keyboard at the bank, were clumsy. He fumbled. He typed. He stared. It's number 3. In the U.S. Ethan looked up at me. His eyes filled with a new, raw emotion. It wasn't pity. It was confusion. It was fear. "Riley, what did you do?" "I told you," I said, my voice quiet. "I launched. But this..." He was scrolling, his thumb moving fast. "This is... TechCrunch just posted an article. The Verge, Wired. Riley, they're all posting about you." "Right now, yes," I said. I sent them a press release. "I've been networking for 6 months." My dad looked at Ethan. "What does that mean? Networking? Is this fake? Did she pay for this?" My dad looked back at me, his eyes narrowing. He was grasping for an explanation. He needed one. He needed me to be the failure he understood. "That's it, isn't it? You bought this. This is all fake. You bought followers, or whatever they're called. You took out another loan to make a big show." He was almost shouting. He was desperate. "You can't buy TechCrunch, Dad," I said. "He's right," Ethan said, his voice a ghost. He was still staring at his phone. "You can't. This is real." He read from his screen, his voice flat. "A Thanksgiving surprise. Echolink just launched, and it may change translation forever. Riley. It says the tech uses a new neural voice mapping protocol. It says it's revolutionary." He looked at me. "Where did you get that?" "I built it," I said. You can't," he said. That's doctorate level stuff." "I know," I said. "I've been busy, Ethan." Aunt Karen was trying to follow along. Her brain was a calculator, and she was trying to find the dollar amount. "So, all these downloads, what does that mean, Riley? Is it making money?" I almost smiled at that. It was the most predictable question she could have asked. I turned my laptop back to myself. I clicked on a different tab. The revenue dashboard. It was connected to the App Store's payment processing system. I had set the price at a 7-day free trial. Then, $9.99 a month, or a $50 lifetime purchase. In the 20 minutes since I had launched, the dashboard showed that 3,400 people had skipped the free trial. They had paid the $50 lifetime fee. Immediately, I did the math in my head. It was fast. $170,000 in 20 minutes. I looked up at Aunt Karen. "Yes, Aunt Karen," I said. "It's making money." Her face went slack. Her bright red lipstick looked suddenly clownish. My mother, who had been frozen this whole time, finally made a sound. It was a small gasp. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at my dad. My dad hadn't moved. He was still leaning on the table. He was staring at the turkey, but he wasn't seeing it. His whole world, his whole carefully constructed reality, had been shattered. Ethan was the strong one. Ethan was the smart one. Ethan was the one who made money. Ethan had a real job. I was the failure. I was the project. I was the charity case. and in 20 minutes I had made more money than Ethan probably made in 2 years. I'm not even sure. I don't know what he makes. I just knew that the number on my screen was bigger than his fourth quarter bonus. The room was processing. My cousins were all on their phones, their faces lit up, whispering, "Oh my God, look at this. She's famous." Aunt Karen was just staring at me. Her calculator brain was broken. My mom was now crying, but silently. Her hand was over her mouth. She was looking at my dad, her eyes full of fear. She was terrified of what he would do next. Ethan just sat down, hard, in his chair. He looked deflated. The golden boy had lost his shine. He just kept shaking his head, refreshing his screen, as if that would make it all go away. And my dad, he was the center of the storm. He was the only thing not moving. He was a statue of old ideas. He finally looked up from the turkey. He didn't look at me. He looked at my mom. "Mary," he said, his voice hoarse. "Get the pie." It was a desperate attempt to pretend this wasn't happening. To go back to normal. To rewind the clock 30 minutes. "Jim," she whispered, "get the pie." My mom stood up, her chair scraping on the floor. She practically ran to the kitchen, happy to have an order, happy to escape, but no one else moved. No one was pretending. The shift was complete. The power had moved. It had moved from the head of the table, from the man with the carving knife, to the failure at the end of the table with the old laptop. The room, the family, the entire foundation of our lives. It had all just cracked in half, and they were all finally, horribly realizing which side they were on. They were on the wrong one, and I was on the right one, and I had the numbers to prove it. My mom came back with the pumpkin pie. She set it on the table. The smell of cinnamon and nutmeg filled the air. It was supposed to be comforting. It was suffocating. She started cutting slices, her hands shaking so badly that the first piece crumbled onto the plate. My dad was still standing. He hadn't moved. He was staring at me now. His face, which had been blank with shock, was turning red. It was a slow, dark flush that started at his neck and crawled up to his hairline. He was past shock. He was in the rage stage. "Turn it off," he said. His voice was low. "What?" I asked, though I had heard him. "Your computer. Your phone. Turn it off. This is a family dinner." He was trying to get his power back. He was giving an order. "No," I said. It was quiet. It wasn't defiant. It was a simple fact. "I can't. This is a live launch. I have to monitor the servers. Monitor the—" He slammed his hand flat on the table. The plates jumped. My mom screamed, "I am sick of your excuses. I am sick of your computer nonsense. You did this. You did this to embarrass me." He was yelling now. The mask was off. This was the man who had terrified me my whole life. "You sat here." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You sat here and you planned this. You waited for me to say something just so you could do this. This stunt. To make me look like a fool in my own home." "Jim, stop it!" my mom cried, dropping the pie knife. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" he roared. He looked at me. "She brings her work to Thanksgiving. She plays on her laptop like a child. And she does this magic trick to humiliate her family." I looked at him. My heart was pounding, but the fear was gone. It was just gone. I had been afraid of this man for 29 years. I had been afraid of his voice, his disappointment, his anger, and now I was just tired of it. I stood up. I was shorter than him, but I didn't feel small. "No, Dad," I said. My voice was as calm as his was loud. "I didn't plan to embarrass you." I paused. I let the words sink in. "You did that all by yourself when you called me a failure." His face froze. The accusation hit him like a physical slap. "I didn't plan this," I continued, my voice still quiet, but it cut through the room. My launch was scheduled for 10 p.m. I was going to go home, sit in my tiny apartment, and do it alone. Because I knew that I couldn't share it with you. Because you would do exactly what you did tonight. You would call it a hobby. You would call me a failure. You would tell me to get a real job. He tried to speak. "Riley, you did this," I said, holding his gaze. "You pushed me. You've been pushing me my whole life. You pushed me to be a copy of Ethan, as Grandma would say. You pushed me into a corner. Tonight you pushed me. And I didn't feel like being pushed anymore." Right then, as if on cue, my phone began to ring. It wasn't the buzz of notifications. It was a real call. The screen lit up. Alert. Server capacity at 98%. It was my automated warning system. I looked at my dad, who was still fuming, and I held up one finger. "Excuse me. I have to take this." I answered the phone. "This is Riley," I said, my voice all business. I turned away from the table. I looked out the dining room window into the dark. Yes, I see the load. The user spike is faster than we projected. The whole table was watching me. This was beyond them. This was a language they didn't speak. Authorize the emergency scaling. Yes, move to the next server tier. All of them? I don't care about the cost. Authorize it. Yes, I'll confirm the payment. Thank you. I hung up. I turned back to the table. My dad's red face had gone pale again. "What was that?" Ethan asked. He was fascinated now. His banker brain was whirring. "What's server scaling?" "It's what happens when you get 100,000 users in 30 minutes, I said. "The servers crash." I looked at my dad. "You said I had nothing to show. You said it was a fantasy. Right now my fantasy is so real that it's breaking the servers I built it on. I have to hire a new team. I have to open a real office. I have to manage a company that, as of right now," I turned my laptop around for him. The revenue number was now over $250,000. "As of right now, this failure is a $250,000 company. And it's been alive for half an hour." My dad stared at the glowing numbers. His mouth was half open. His shoulders, which were always so broad and proud, slumped. He had no words. He had no arguments. He couldn't tell me to get a job as a bank teller. He couldn't tell me I was wasting my life. I had built a new reality, and it had just destroyed his. He looked at the number. He looked at me. He looked at Ethan, and then, for the first time in his life, my father, Jim Thompson, had absolutely nothing to say. He just stood there, his mouth half open, defeated by a glowing screen he couldn't understand. The turning point, Grandma's verdict. The silence that followed was the most awful one yet. It was the sound of a 30-year-old family dynamic dying. My dad, defeated, slowly, heavily, sat down in his chair. He looked old. He looked small. My mom was standing by the pie, her hands clasped, silent tears streaming down her face. Ethan was just shaking his head, staring into his empty plate. Aunt Karen was looking at me with a strange new expression. It was a mix of awe and calculation. She was reevaluating my entire existence. My cousins were just silent, watching. The tension was so thick I could barely breathe. My dad's public humiliation was complete. And honestly, it didn't feel as good as I thought it would. I felt empty. I had won. But what had I won? A broken family? Then one voice cut through the silence. It was quiet. It was frail. But it was sharp. "Well, Jim, you finally did it." All eyes turned to the other end of the table. Grandma June, my dad's mother. She was 84 years old. She was tiny, a little bird of a woman in a gray cardigan. All night she had been quiet. She had eaten her food, she had watched, and she had said nothing. She had watched the fight. She had watched me launch my company. She had watched my dad's meltdown. She was just slowly eating her pumpkin pie. My dad looked up, confused. "What, Mom? What did I do?" Grandma June put her fork down. She looked at him, and her eyes were not the cloudy eyes of an old woman. They were clear, they were sharp, and they were angry. "You've been trying to break that girl for 20 years, she said, her voice clear as a bell. "And you finally did it. You broke her. You broke her free." My dad was stunned. "Mom, I was trying to help her. I was trying to get her to see reality." "Your reality, Jim," Grandma June said. She shook her head, a sad, slow motion. "Not hers. You're a good man, but you're a terrible listener." She turned her sharp eyes to me. I felt like I was going to cry. This was the one person in the family I had always, desperately, wanted to be proud of me. "Your grandfather," she said to me, but she was talking to the whole table. "My husband. He was a builder. He built houses. He could take a pile of wood and a box of nails, and he could make a home. He could see the final house before he even laid the foundation." She looked back at my dad. "Your father was a builder, Jim. But you were always a manager. You liked the rules. You liked the spreadsheets. You liked the sure thing. You went into banking. It suited you. And that was fine." She pointed a wrinkled finger at my dad, and then at Ethan. "You raised one son just like you. A manager, a copy. And he's a good manager. He's a good copy. Ethan flinched. It was the first time in his life he had ever been called a copy. Then Grandma June looked at me. Her face softened. But she said, her voice full of something I had never heard before. Her, you didn't know what to do with. Because she's not like you, Jim. She's like him. She's like your father. She's a builder. I finally lost it. A single tear rolled down my cheek. You spent so much time, Grandma continued, trying to hammer her square peg into your round hole that you never stopped to look at what she was building. You called her a failure. Your own father. He would have been ashamed of you tonight. Jim. Ashamed? That word hit my dad harder than my revenue numbers. Ashamed. He wouldn't have cared about her messy room or her coffee, Grandma June said, her voice rising. He would have seen her blueprints. He would have seen her working. He would have been the one bringing her coffee. He would have been proud. She looked at me, a real bright smile spreading across her face. You raised a builder, Jim, not a copy. And it's the best thing you ever did, even if you were too blind to see it. You should be proud. The table was silent. My dad? He just stared at his mother. He had no defense. She had spoken the truth. The one truth that had been buried under 30 years of real jobs and expectations. He looked at me. His eyes were different. The anger was gone. The disappointment was gone. He just looked lost. Ethan, for the first time all night, looked over at me. And he nodded. It was a small, almost invisible nod. But it was there. It was a concession. It was respect. Grandma June picked up her fork. Now this is a very good pie, Mary, she said, taking a bite. But it needs whipped cream. And just like that, the turning point was over. The verdict was in. My grandmother, the matriarch, the one person whose judgment my father could not question, had just rewritten our family history. She had just told my father that I was the one who was carrying his father's legacy. Not him, not Ethan, me. The failure. The rest of the dinner was a strange dream. We ate the pie. My mom, in a daze, found the whipped cream. The family started talking again, but it was small, safe talk. The weather, the roads. My cousins were texting under the table, and for once, nobody told them to stop. I knew they were texting about me. My dad was silent. He ate his pie. He just stared at his plate. He was a king who had just lost his kingdom. Aunt Karen, however, had found her new direction. She had done the math, and I was no longer a charity case. I was an opportunity. Riley, dear, she said, leaning in, her voice suddenly sweet and syrupy. I am so proud of you. I always knew you were a genius. Always. I just looked at her. No, you didn't, Aunt Karen. She was so startled by my directness that she just blinked. Well? And I'm busy. Please don't. I gave her no room. The old Riley would have smiled and nodded. The old Riley would have let her say it. The new Riley didn't have time for it. Aunt Karen's smile froze. She leaned back, blushing. That was the first boundary. It felt good. My phone, which I had put on Do Not Disturb, was lighting up face down. The screen was just a constant silent strobe light flashing against the dark wood. I finally picked it up. 200 unread emails. 400 DMs. 80 missed calls. The downloads had crossed 100,000. It had been 45 minutes. One DM was from a name I knew. A very, very famous tech journalist from a massive global newspaper. Not just a blog. It read, Riley, this is astounding. I'm on a deadline. I'm running a front-page story on our tech section tomorrow. I need a quote. What's the story behind this Thanksgiving launch? It's genius marketing, I smiled. Genius marketing. He thought I'd planned this. He thought my dad's cruelty was a marketing stunt. I finally tasted the pie. It was sweet. It was real. It was the first thing I had tasted all night. I started to type a reply. Riley, Ethan said. His voice was quiet. I looked up. What's your server architecture? He asked. Are you on a dedicated cloud or a hybrid? It was a real question. A technical question. He was trying to connect. He was trying to understand on his terms. AWS, I said. Right now I'm scaling on their EC2 instances. I just had to authorize the jump to the enterprise tier. He nodded, processing. That's expensive. The revenue is covering it, I said. He nodded again. Good. That's smart. He looked at me, really looked at me. It's a hell of a build, Riles. I'm impressed. Thanks, Ethan, I said. and I meant it. His respect was almost more shocking than my dad's anger. My phone rang again. This time it was a name. It was Ben Lead Dev, my only full-time employee who I'd been paying in stock options and dreams. I have to take this, I said. I stood up from the table. I walked into the kitchen. My mom was there, rinsing plates, her back to me. Hey, Ben, I said, leaning against the counter. Oh my God, Riley! He screamed into the phone. What is happening? I'm looking at the analytics. I'm looking at Twitter. Are you kidding me? I laughed. It was a real out-loud laugh. It's real, Ben, we're live. You launched? Without me? I thought we were waiting until 10. Change of plans, I said, looking back into the dining room. I saw my dad, just a shadow from here, staring at his empty plate. I had a sudden marketing opportunity. Are you a billionaire? He asked, breathless. No, Ben, I laughed. But you're going to get a salary. A real one. Starting tomorrow, he screamed again. I talked to him for 5 minutes. We made a plan. I would be back at my apartment in an hour. We had to hire people. We had to fix a bug he'd found. We had to work. When I hung up, my mom was standing there holding a wet plate. She was just watching me. Mom, I said. You're really okay? She asked. I'm great, Mom. I'm really great. She put the plate down and she hugged me. She just held on to me, her body shaking with sobs. I'm so sorry, Riley, she whispered. I'm so sorry. He's so stubborn. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud. I know, Mom, I said, and I held her. I walked back into the dining room. I sat down. I picked up my laptop. I replied to the journalist. Sure, I typed. I'd love to send a quote. I'm free for a call in 1 hour. I put my phone down. I looked at my family. They were all just watching me. My cousins, my aunt, my brother. It took me 20 minutes to prove my father wrong. It took me another 30 minutes to become the new head of the table without ever moving my chair. I left an hour later. Nobody tried to stop me. Aunt Karen asked for my business card. I told her I didn't have any. Ethan just said, good luck, Riley. Call me if you need anything. With, the numbers. My dad was in his armchair in the living room. The football game was on, but the sound was off. I stood in the doorway. I'm leaving, I said. He didn't turn around. He just stared at the silent screen. Okay, he said. His voice was thick. I almost walked away. But I stopped. Dad? He finally turned. His eyes were red. You did good, kid, he said. He couldn't say daughter. He couldn't say Riley. But he said kid. He turned back to the TV. I walked out the front door. I thought I would be angry. I thought I would be crying. I wasn't. He didn't apologize. Men like him rarely do. But he said I did good. And as I sat in my taxi, my laptop open, my phone ringing, watching the servers hold steady as we crossed 200,000 downloads, I realized that was enough. The next morning, the article wasn't just on the tech section. It was on the front page of the whole website. The Thanksgiving launch. How one woman's failure became a 10-meter company in 12 hours. They had done the math. They had used my quote. I was in my tiny apartment. I had not slept. I was drinking coffee. My whole life had changed. My phone buzzed. It was a text. A group text to the Thompson family chat. It was from my dad. It was just a link. A link to the Forbes article, which had already picked up the story. He wrote one line under it. My daughter built this. I stared at the text. My daughter. That was the first time in my life he had ever said my daughter without an asterisk. Without a but, without a sigh, he was bragging. He was taking credit. And that, I realized, was the real victory. He wasn't just proud. He was claiming my success. He had finally accepted my reality because he wanted to be a part of it. That was the quietest, sweetest revenge of all. My whole world changed on Thanksgiving night. And it all started because one man called me a failure. It makes me wonder, how many of you have been called a failure? How many of you have been told your dream is just a hobby? Let me know your story in the comments. I'll be reading them, and if you liked my story, make sure to like and subscribe. You never know what I'll build next.